From sub-Saharan Africa to Southeast Asia, cities have historically grown outwards to house fast-rising populations. But for land-starved Hong Kong, that wasn't an option.
Hong Kong is a really interesting city because it needs to accommodate growth, but it has nowhere to grow.
In 1898, China granted Britain a 99-year lease of the city and its surrounding territories. But one military fort found itself outside of both British and Chinese rule. Kowloon Walled City took a life of its own, becoming a shelter for squatters, refugees, and crime syndicates. In the 1960s, developers started building new modular structures above older ones, transforming the city into a world unto its own. By 1990, this self-governed experiment housed nearly 50,000 people in a 2.6-hectare area. To put things into perspective, that's 119 times the density of New York City.
Kowloon Walled City was an incredibly dense place, and they had a lot of problems. It didn't have enough air circulation, it didn't have sunlight, it didn't have a lot of the basic infrastructure, because it grew in a way that wasn't actually managed. Our logical reaction is therefore to react against density. But for cities to work, we need to have a critical density. If we don't have the critical density, we don't really have working cities. The question is, how dense can we go?
Today, more than 20 years after its demolition, the enclave has been replaced by Kowloon Walled City Park. But as the city looks below ground for its development, the land under the old walled city and other spaces could again become a hotspot for experimentation. To free up more space for housing, Hong Kong is planning to build artificial islands and move facilities like data centers and retail space below ground. But some worry construction and access to those underground facilities could mean less green space above.
In the 50s and 60s, we tried to segregate cities horizontally, and that was a disaster. We've been trying to fix these problems ever since. The idea of trying to distribute uses vertically or segregate uses vertically will also be just as bad. The way to accommodate density in cities like Hong Kong is by going higher. Is there a limit to how high we can go? I'm not sure. We haven't found it yet.